Hi again, everybody. I'm Jamie Allison, and this is the Big Idea, Big Moves podcast. This is the destination for high performers. We talk to people doing really cool things in their niche. We talk to athletes. We talk to CEOs. We've talked to scientists in the past, all people that are doing really cool things that you might be able to take away some of those items and apply to your own lives as well. I know we have one of those guests today. I'm really excited about being able to interview her. Just before we jump into that, a couple of quick things that obviously we have to do is that, you hear from a lot of the guests here about the importance of being able to write down goals and maybe journal and things like that. And people are always trying to find the right one for them. If you are looking for that, one of the cool kind of partnerships that we've had recently is with Gym Gypsy. It's a tool that is a combination of a journal, combination of a goal tracker. It has everything from tracking your strength and skill work, nutrition, PRs, all of those things, but also just generally talks about your why you want to do the things you want to do, and a real whole life approach. So definitely take a look at it. If you go onto our Instagram page, you can look through the bio and you'll be able to link into a discount code there. And you could just go directly to www.gym-gypsy.com, and I'm sure you'll find something that makes sense for you there. The other thing is when you go onto our Instagram page, make sure you check again the bio and sign up for our newsletter. We've got lots of cool kind of discounts and things when we have great guests like the one today coming up. You'll hear about it before everybody else. So sign up for that, and you'll be able to get some of those insider tips, I guess. And so today, really happy to have Corinna with us today. Corinna Coffin, a lot of people would have recognize her first of all because she's pretty high profile out there, but she's a registered dietitian, which we're going to talk a little bit about that, but she's a pro obstacle course racer, a fitness coach. She's a multisport athlete. She has stood on the podium at the 2020 Spartan Games, Tough Mudder X, Spartan World Championships, Spartan Stadion Games. She has been a CrossFit Games team competitor, triathlete, lacrosse player. Basically, you can go through a list, I think, of all of the different sports, and she's done some of those. She was also, I think, the last female reigning champ of Steve Austin's Broken Skull Challenge as well, which is kind of cool. We've talked to a couple of people that have been on that show as well. But obviously, really busy lately, not just with your own kind of pursuits that way, but you've moved recently, I know, Corinna. So congratulations on that, and thanks for taking the time for us today.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm honored to be here.
Well, you know what? The one thing that everybody sees right away is that you are this hybrid athlete that does kind of even the sports that you excel at are often really varied, have a lot of different components to it. And maybe, have you always been an athlete that kind of dabbled in different sports? Have you been more directed to some things? What's your journey looked like?
Yeah, I kind of say, and I joke, but it's kind of true. Like, I'm not really good at anything. And so I just enjoy being versatile, and I enjoy trying new things. I like being challenged, and I was always into sports growing up. I have 3 older brothers, and was constantly like riding in their wake a little bit of just trying to do whatever they were doing. And they're very athletic, talented guys. And so that was kind of my upbringing, just running around on our horse farm, trying to play catch up with all my brothers. And it's just been really fun to do so many different things. And I think that's at the heart of what I like to do, is always have fun with the activities that I'm involved in. And so I haven't really stopped pursuing that, which I truly enjoy. And it's cool to be able to compete in different events that are kind of capitalizing on those types of areas, or those types of maybe individuals who are a little bit of that hybrid style athlete like I am.
How did you go from, because I think, if I remember correctly, you were doing lacrosse and some of those things when you were in school. Maybe, first of all, how did the transition happen to where you decided, oh, well, maybe OCR and CrossFit and things like that are maybe what I wanted to do? So maybe I'll start with that. And then the other part might be, when you're in school, how do you balance some of that stuff when you're doing athletics and, you were doing schooling and that's part of your life now too?
Yeah, no, it's a great question because it is kind of a fun evolution and journey over different sports. But I think, again, I think I don't like complacency. And so I found myself, I was playing club lacrosse at Virginia Tech and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I played my first 2 years and I was really itching to try something new and be challenged in different ways. And I really developed a passion for fitness and all different types of movement and exercise. And so and I have to give credit to my family for raising me in a sense of going after what I want. So I've never really been a sit back shy person. And so my mom was like, well, you've been doing a little bit of cycling when you're home in the summer between school years. And you don't know how to swim, but you love running. And she's like, well, why don't you try triathlons? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I haven't ever swam a lap in a pool, like, freestyle or any type of formal stroke.
Other than cannonballing and
paddle occasionally. And so, but you know what? It didn't scare me quite enough to prevent me from pursuing that. And I think my triathlon team at Virginia Tech was amazing. They were welcoming all types of individuals. You could be terrible at all three sporting domains and they would still welcome you aboard. And I thought that was really cool because not many teams will allow that. And so I just remember all the practices were optional. It was a club team. But I remember I would wake up, and I was a RA my junior year. And so that kind of helped because I lived, wasn't getting too crazy at night by this point. I was living on campus. And so I would wake up at 6 a.m. and get in the pool for pool practice. And I just signed up for my first triathlon, the first one the team was doing. And I was like, you know what, if I don't sign up for something and have that deadline hanging over me, I might put it off for forever. And so got kind of,
are you that kind of person? Like, do you have to have something to strive, like a specific thing to strive for all the time? Or like, do you set goals that way?
I don't actually. I was just thinking about this the other day because I kind of have, I have one event, and I'll talk about it, that's kind of looming. But surprisingly, in the last 2 years with COVID and just being, not having a ton of events going on, I've actually been very okay with and still getting after it, just knowing I love to be prepared for whatever. I want someone to be able to call me up and be like, hey, Corinna, there's this XYZ thing going on. And it doesn't matter what it is, but if I continue pushing myself every day and kind of chasing that, that desire to improve, then I want to be able to say yes. Like I want to take on those new challenges. And so that was the case. But I will say, trying to build the confidence in my swimming ability for triathlon, I needed that sign up, or else I was never going to feel ready to swim open water. In a short
first
period.
push.
I needed that. But and then from there, our gym at school was offering these CrossFit style classes, and I thought it looked fun. And I always enjoyed like seeing strong females and, wanting to, again, kind of be able to hang with the boys and not let that, the gender differences be, anything holding me back. And so I was like, I want to lift weights. I want to be strong, but I also want to do triathlons. And so it kind of all came together through obstacle course racing in a strange way. It was actually a friend of mine. She sprained her ankle really badly the day before a race. And she called me up at 10 p.m. and was like, Corinna, this is super last minute, but there's this race entry. I can't do this race tomorrow morning. And I was wondering if you want my entry, because I know you like running, but you're also really strong and you would be good at obstacles. And so I was like, man, I don't have anything going on tomorrow morning. And I drove like 3 hours to middle of nowhere in Virginia, didn't know a single soul.
Wow.
And had the time of my life. It was a battle
Yeah.
frog race. It was,
Yep.
they were around for a little bit, and I just had a blast, and I ended up winning that race, and it was cool. And then,
You won it the first one?
it was cool, yeah, but, and it was very small, kind of,
Yeah.
it was one of their first races, but I had so much fun. I was like, wow. And I met so many people. Actually, I met a couple people who were pretty big in the Spartan community at the time, who were racing a lot, and they were like, well, you should come to the Spartan sprint race in DC next weekend. And then did that and podium there. And then they're like, we should come to the Boston race in 2 weeks. And so that summer was just a whirlwind of racing, and I loved every single moment of it, and was like, I was pinching myself, like, how can this be, I fell into this pretty randomly through that friend, but it seemed to be this perfect culmination of endurance meets CrossFit, or at least kind of that strength component. And it took off from there.
Well, and that's, I think, when you first started kind of coming on the broader, I guess, scene, that's what everybody said, is you kind of jumped in very quickly and suddenly became a player very fast. Did it feel that way to you, that suddenly, okay, well, now I'm at a pretty high level very quickly in that sport?
It did, actually. That first year was so incredible because like I said, I was kind of hopping weekend to weekend, different Spartan races. And then after the fifth one, it was September, and that was when they had the Spartan World Championship. And I remember I was starting my senior year of college, and I was like, I'm gonna fly up to Vermont on this weekend, and I'm gonna do the World Championship and see. I think and I got in on Friday. By the time I got to where I was staying that night, it was midnight, and I had to wake up, at 4:40 or 4:30 next morning to try to eat some food and do this 15-mile race up this mountain. I just remember I was running off of pure adrenaline, and it's funny to look back as a dietitian now and look at my fueling strategy during the race, which is a whole other story in and of itself. But it's pretty funny looking back. But yeah, I it was a great race for me. I ended up finishing second, and in a 4.5 hour race, losing by 2.5 minutes or so. I was like, it was I was very proud of that finish. I had expectations or hopes for a top 10 finish. And so I was very,
right
very
up there,
delighted and surprised, to say the least. And then, like I said, and then I was racing for various pro teams in the next couple of years, traveling a ton, loving it, but definitely being young, and I was 21 and just getting caught up in all this fun racing and winning and traveling, and it took a toll. And I got a little burnout in that.
And so when you go through that, I mean, that's one thing where it's a lot of people wouldn't realize, especially in that sport, is you have to do a lot of the races, even just because of sponsors and all of those things too. So you have to be pretty present for a lot of that as well. And that does take a toll on probably your body, but also just even your own mindset. It's like anything else. I'm sure it must have been difficult at that time. Even though everybody thinks it's fantastic, there is a time where it probably turns the other way a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and I remember being, the first year, so I started off racing with the Battle Frog pro team, and there were 4 of us pro athletes, and they had 12 or 13 races on their schedule for 2015. So this is like my spring of my senior year and into the fall of that year. And I remember under contract, we had to race all 12 races, and then that didn't include Spartan. And so in order to qualify for Spartan World Championships and be in the Spartan series, you had to do X amount of races for them, and then there were all the World Championships. And so by the end of it, you're looking at, I think one year I raced like 27 races from March to November. Like, it wasn't even a full year. It was just it was
basically every weekend you were probably doing a race, right?
It was like 2 weekends, and sometimes more every month, and usually in totally different states. And I mean, again, looking back, what a cool
Yeah,
you know,
fun. I'm sure.
yeah, no, not I wouldn't change it I wouldn't have changed it for the world. And it was such a cool experience as a, fresh out of college
For
kid,
sure. Yeah.
that many people don't get to enjoy. So it was
Cool.
amazing, but it came it came quick, and had to put on the brakes a little bit after that second year.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's cool to still kind of be involved in that, 7 years later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we'll jump ahead to, I mean, Spartan Games. You were one of the participants there. We've talked to a lot of people from that show, and you did very well there as well. And what was that experience like, especially considering there was such a mix of athletes there and a really different kind of format than many have seen before. It was pretty cool that way.
And that was so amazing, especially to be my only one of the only races going on in
Yeah.
2020. 2020, yeah, I knew from the beginning. I was like, well, it's not looking very promising from a racing standpoint. So I'm gonna enjoy this year, and as always, like put that fun element at the top of my priority list. And so I was really
Yeah.
getting into mountain biking. I was doing some swimming. My husband was, training for the military. And so did a lot of like longer endurance runs and rucking and a lot of pull-ups and just calisthenics and bear crawls. And so I was just doing just a lot of varied training, and I had no idea. I mean, I'm sure you've talked to a lot of the other athletes like this. We literally were notified about like been happening
Yeah.
maybe a month out. And we, at that point, like when the first kind of calls were like, hey, so we're thinking about doing this thing, that was maybe a month out. And then we didn't actually get any intel into like what some of those events might look like till like 2 weeks before. So I knew, I was like, well, this is, you've either prepared in some capacity for this throughout this year or over the past years, or you haven't. And I that's kind of the fun element about obstacle course racing that I fell in love with initially. The unknown, like you go out on this course and not sure what you're going to be faced with, but you just have to figure it out and get through it. And that's very much how those 4 days looked with the Spartan Games, competing in 10 very different events.
Yeah.
Some were, ones I really enjoyed. Some weren't my favorite, but at the end of the day, I was really happy with my consistency across the board in all 10 events. I think my worst finish was 5th place. And so I just felt like, I might not be very good at anything, but across the board, I am, it was cool to be competent in so many varied discipline.
And they were really varied. For those people who haven't seen it, it was heavy endurance things, and then regular kind of obstacle racing kind of stuff. But then there was heavy lifting. I mean, we had Faith on a while ago, and she laughs at that about how, okay, well, in wrestling, okay, I love the wrestling part because I'm just naturally larger than some of the other women. And she said, or the lifting where I was having to lift a lot. But then when I had to go on my bike, it was almost just funny to do the bike. So it is interesting to see that, in the fact that you were able to be pretty consistently near the top in all of those items. That's why you ended up where you were, I think, at the end as well. So
yeah, and of course they pulled athletes. There was no qualifying for this. They invited certain athletes, so it'll be interesting. So we do know that that's happening again this year, and I'm very excited. I really haven't been racing or competing much in anything this year, but like what I said beforehand, I'm still training. Like, some days, sure, like work is a priority. The relationships in my life are a priority. And, so I've really enjoyed kind of that change of pace where I'm putting a lot of those things first and foremost, when in my younger years, that the racing, the competing definitely was closer up to the top of my list. But still, that being said, I love pushing myself. I love working hard. I think I surround myself with people who share that same sentiment. And so it kind of fuels that for myself. I've been training hard in all different types of formats, and maybe I shouldn't say training. Like, I think working out and training are are different, because training, you kind of have an end goal or something that you're working toward.
Yeah.
And I guess I am working towards something, but sometimes I just don't know what that is. But I'm like, there's going to be something that fits what I enjoy doing, and that's it.
You've obviously made some changes to try to balance things a lot more that way, and part of it is probably just because of the stage of life and everything too, that just happens. How do you do that though? Like how do you make sure that you've got enough focus on your work and enough focus on your family relationships and all the things that just make you feel a little more balanced? What have you had to do kind of very methodically yourself to make sure that you do that?
Yeah, and I feel like there's like this natural checks and balances with some of those things, right? The people who are important in your life, if you're neglecting those relationships, it's pretty obvious, right? And so
Yeah.
for the past 2 years, or in the last, I should say, mostly year, my husband joining the military and us moving, and him, and then us getting married, it's like that means a lot to me. That's very important to me. And being a supportive partner through all that, through these changes, has been just taking a very front seat with everything. And so, but I think it's an awareness of my, like, it's a self-awareness piece too. I feel like internally, like my external expression of how or why I like to do so many different things is a little bit of representative to how, I balance myself internally, because balance is so important to me. And so having relationships, having an understanding of how I'm feeling, if certain things are feeling out of whack, if my nutrition is off, like I'm just really self-aware, and I'm a feeler. And so I feel like, I've developed this awareness over time from doing so many different things. So I have a natural checks and balances
Yeah.
myself. But I also, like I said, I'm surrounded by a great group of people and family members who aren't afraid to let me know, if my parents are wonderful role models, and they care a lot about me, and so they've really helped keep me grounded too,
Yeah.
over the past few years. So it's a team effort, but it's also, it's not getting too lost in all the voices and the chaos and the noise of the world, and being more self-perceptive.
Yeah, it's interesting how people that have taken that approach actually find that a lot of times what ends up happening is you do better in certain phases of your life because you're spending more time on that. We talked to, I mean, who Annie Thorisdottir was, who we talked to her before she kind of had her most recent CrossFit Games, and just talked about how, she reevaluated things a little bit after, having a child and everything, but that she was really stoked about being able to make sure that she has, for her escape from that was to also work out. And she was judged on that a little bit early on. And it was just interesting to hear that, and then see her performance recently, which was pretty cool too, to see. But it is interesting how a lot of people, when they do start to do that, they become, much more fulfilled, I guess, as well. So, which is pretty cool.
Right. It's easy to lose sight of things, like when I'm looking back, I'm like, there was a selfishness involved. There always is a selfishness in, to some extent, and like pursuing a personal desire that's not really, it seems a bit self-fulfilling, right? Or maybe that's not the right word, but like in my case, I love, passionate about nutrition, and passionate about fitness.
Yeah.
And I was spending a lot of time racing, but knowing what I wanted to do in life, how is the racing working toward, how I want to change the world, or how I want to contribute to this world. And so, part of it is that growth, stepping back and seeing, okay, well, how do we, it's totally fine to be racing and doing kind of, sort of selfish, in a sense, pursuits, but it's like, okay, how do we tie it back into this larger circle of contributing to a greater mission? And so for me, I've been really fortunate to, I'm fairly in the know or and somewhat known in the obstacle course racing community. And so now with my nutrition business, like by having that presence and a little bit, being tied in with a lot of things going on in social media in that niche area,
Yeah.
I'm able to help bring my nutritional knowledge to individuals who are trying to race in obstacle course racing or who enjoy doing that as part of a healthy lifestyle.
How have you found that, how did you find it affected you when you started to become a little more, knowledgeable in kind of nutrition and how you were fueling your body? And then the other side would be, how is that for you to be able to pass that on to other people? Because that's pretty cool too, that you're probably able to see some really inspiring stuff happening from the work that you do as well, I would assume.
Yeah, it's cool to obviously have the education in the nutrition on the nutrition side of things, but then to also have walked through the evolution and the learning of all these different concepts nutritionally, personally through all my racing endeavors. So like I said, my first races, especially that first world championship, was just looking back, like I cringe at what my approach was, and so it was fun to make mistakes and learn and apply all the things I was learning in school. And so that's been an incredible game changer for me. And I think just even to be in the same area or to be competitive for 7 years, and I say that a little bit loosely because it's kind of on and off, but and in different areas. But
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate, I think, to not sustain a lot of injury or additional burnout from aside from that initial period. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that has to do with the upkeep of my body and taking care of myself from a nutrition standpoint and staying injury free, staying healthy. So that's been great for me personally, and then helping, passing that forward, helping other individuals with their nutrition, with a little bit of training guidance as well. It's a lot of individuals I work with, obviously solely just for nutrition, but at the end of the day, when I know what they're doing training wise, or I know what they're about to do from a racing standpoint, you can bet that that's going to be worked into that nutrition plan, because I understand the demands from the sport.
Yeah, you kind of have the expertise, but you also have the experience to go along with it, which is probably a big leg up for those individuals that are connecting with you on that too.
And it's just fun. It is fun to connect, like exactly what you said, to connect with the individuals I work with through a sport that we both fell in love with. And I say sport, but at the same time, obviously I work with plenty of individuals who do it recreationally. And it's just something fun. But a lot of people get hooked, and it becomes something that they enjoy doing on the regular.
Very cool. And you mentioned, I'm going to go back a little bit because you mentioned earlier that you grew up on a horse farm, and I think that now your father, I think, was actually very successful at that as well. Is that right? And I think he went to the Olympics. Is that right? Like, was that an impactor for you, or was that is he just kind of always been that kind of a person from your perspective?
So yeah, my dad was a competitor in three-day equestrian, 3-day eventing. Sorry, I was like blanking on that.
Yeah.
He, so the 3-day eventing is dressage, jumping, and cross country. And so so he won the gold medal at the 76 Montreal Olympics for individual and team. So that year, and it was and he was only 21 at the time, so it's pretty cool to be. And that's when I was 21. That was when I was able to make the podium at the Spartan World Championship, and obviously very different, and his the Olympics is on a whole other level. But it was cool to draw some of the similarities from his, especially the cross country. I don't know if you've ever watched equestrian cross country events, but it is remarkable, and it's very similar to obstacle course racing in that especially in 76, they're creating these insane obstacles for the horse and rider to go through. They're going through the woods, they're jumping across like really big water obstacles. And, I Google some of the images from, my father's Olympic ride, and I was just, oh my gosh, how cool. But it was fun to kind of draw the similarity there. Like, wow, we're doing sort of similar things. Obviously he's got another beast involved, and a horse, the horse component, of course, but he's been really, my dad having gone through, being an athlete from a young age, making a lot of sacrifices to, focus on his racing, and, being very like having that singular focus to compete at such a high level, and then turning it into, being able to step back from the competition world a little bit and become a coach and pass that, all that he's learned and his expertise to other young riders. And then, to get involved in the saddle making industry, and making saddles to create a better, a better ride for the horse, the horse rider. And so it's cool to see his evolution, and it's fun stepping back now to kind of see so many of the parallels between
some of those things happening with you. That's pretty cool.
Completely different kind of area of sports.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, Corinna, that we always do is we pick up on some of that kind of expertise of the guest, and just see if there's a couple of actionable things that we can have people who are listening to take away. There's been lots already, but let's say, especially considering your nutrition background, and I'm sure there are lots of people, whether they're high level athletes or whether they're somebody that just wants to become a little more well-rounded from that end. If there are a couple of things that you might have, 2 or 3 tips around somebody, if they want to really kind of recalibrate and look at what they're doing from a nutrition standpoint to perform better, whether it's in their sport or in their life generally, are there a couple of things that you think they should do right away?
Yeah, I see a lot. I work, like I said, with a lot of active individuals, and so the biggest thing I see, especially in my female population, is under eating, under fueling. And so I think usually step one is I'll have individuals just track a couple of days of their intake, and maybe they've never done that before. You can write it down in a food log, or you can use an app, but just having an understanding, having those few days tracked. And I remember doing this exercising in one of my college classes, and it was the first time I'd ever tracked my food intake, but it really opened my eyes to what I was actually eating over the course of the day, from, not just from a food standpoint, but like, okay, components of that food, right? The nutrients involved, the vitamins, minerals, the macronutrients in terms of protein, fat, and carbs, and kind of getting to see a whole new look at food in a way that, from a fueling standpoint. And I know that some individuals don't have that nutrition background where they can see numbers and then determine what their what those next steps need to be. But I think the first piece is awareness. So even just writing down, even if you were just to use a food journal, writing down your food intake for the day, you might see 3 things on the list for the day and be like, wow, I really don't eat. But so many people, there's so much going on in our lives these days, and there's so many distractions. It's really, sometimes nutrition, we forget about it. It gets put on the back burner. And I think we forget that how much it's involved in fueling our everyday activities, and just keeping our bodies healthy. And so just having that appreciation for food is important, but it starts with the awareness of like what we're actually doing for our bodies on a daily, consistent basis.
Right. Very cool. And you mentioned it a bit there, and I'll just kind of revisit it a little bit, is that, and I think you said a bit about it earlier, is that you're a fan of making sure, and you wanted to make sure that there is a good perception of strong females, and that's one of the things that a lot of the guests have really talked about, is that it has changed over time. And I guess the first question would be, have you seen that perception change over time? And is there something to, because there's probably lots of young ladies that look to you as that role model. Is that something that you enjoy being, I guess, because you are seen as one of those kind of strong females? So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I absolutely love being in a space where, where that's celebrated, where that female strength is celebrated, is looked up to, is, an aspiring trait or quality. And so, and what's so cool about, obstacle course racing is that, you even see the kids races, at every big Spartan race, there's always a kids race too. And it's so fun to see the little kids, and especially the little girls, get out there running in the mud, rolling around and doing, all these upper body, all these upper body related obstacles, and feeling strong, and seeing their own strength, and then wanting to pursue that. So I love being tied in with sports that empower females. And it's just been wonderful being part of, different sporting communities, whether it's been CrossFit or obstacle course racing, where all the women are super supportive of one another. I think that's one of the really cool and rare, wonders of what I've been able to be involved in over the last 7 years, is just women uplifting other women and encouraging each other to continue being these strong figures for, the younger female generation.
Well, I'm sure you'll continue to be that role model. What is coming up for you? I mean, have you got any things that are kind of nailed down, or what are you looking to do over the next little while?
Yeah, so like we talked about, the Spartan Games are definitely coming back this year.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's a little bit, it's exciting knowing how it went last year, and knowing that I was very close to, I came in second there.
Yeah.
I felt like I had a very consistent effort. And so, obviously from having gone through that experience, I have things that I, of course, can always be working on. So now that I know that's coming up, probably in October, I've heard rumors, kind of, that gives me a lot of extra motivation, I guess I'll just say, to kind of continue my varied training. There's areas that I just haven't really touched in a little while. Like I haven't been biking as much as I did last year, or swimming as much. And so or doing any wrestling. So there's definitely events where, like, maybe I should just start adding those in a little bit over these next few weeks. But that's my main focus this year, or I guess say that's kind of the one thing that I am for sure doing, that I would really like to do. Don't have anything specific. There's always, these world championships coming up in the fall. And so there may be, OCR world championships, Spartan world championships. Those are always fun. But like I said, my training's been a little bit varied this year, and in obstacle course racing, to do well in a world championship, obviously you need different strengths and the running and the strength training, but at the same time you still have to be training specifically for a longer distance, or a certain distance that you're going to be racing in. So anyway, we'll see if I jump into any of those races, just to kind of see, I always love to put feelers out and see where I'm at, and again, give me a little fuel or fire in my belly to chase after something more specific. But I really like this idea of the Spartan Games, because it allows me to be very flexible with my training.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know lots of people will be looking forward to seeing you there. So that's very cool. If people are trying to follow you and see what you're doing, what are some of the best ways of doing that?
Yeah, I guess I'm most active on Instagram. So CS Coffin 13 is my Instagram handle, and I have a link there to my website for any nutrition related inquiries, and so that's all linked in with my Instagram. So that's probably the best one.
All right, we'll make sure that those are all in the show notes too, to make sure that people can connect through. Definitely take a look at the profile, but also go in and check out some of the great stuff that from a nutrition standpoint too. That's very cool. So if you haven't hit subscribe on the podcast, make sure you do that right now, because you will get first shot at hearing all of these great episodes. We have great people every week. So again, just make sure that that you subscribe there. Check us out on Instagram. And otherwise, again, thank you for taking the time, Karina. Really appreciate it. I know it's been busy for you lately, so thanks so much for taking the time with us.
Thank you, Jamie. It's been fun chatting with you.
All right. And we will talk again to everybody else on Big Idea, Big Moves.